Jane don't answer her phone.
Perfect. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the November 5th, 2020 Township of Springfield meeting of the Planning Board. Adequate notice has been given in accordance with the sunshine laws. Notice was published on September 22nd, 2020 in the Star Ledger, which is the official newspaper of the Township of Springfield, and posted on the Annex Building on September 22nd, 2020. Let's do a salute to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, perfect. Well, welcome everyone. Ms. Ball, can we please have a roll call?
Yep. Committeeman Huber,
Here.
Mr. David Barnett,
Here.
Mr. Andrew Schwartz,
Present.
Mr. Jerry Fernandez, absent, Mr. Aaron Loffer,
Here.
Mr. Brian Brendel,
Here.
Ms. Marissa Ruggiero,
Here.
Mr. Scott Wishna,
Here.
Vice Chair Sharon Kessel,
Here.
and Chair Jeff Tiger.
Here. Perfect. Great. Glad everyone's here. Okay, the first order of business is we obviously met in October. We had a meeting. There were minutes created for that meeting. I'm sure everyone had a chance to review on the Google Drive those meeting minutes. If anyone has any questions or concerns, I seeing none by looking through everyone's picture. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope. Okay, perfect. Motion passes. Anyone abstain? I think everyone was there, so that's okay. Okay, the next one, we have a resolution. We had a Furniture Assist appear before us last time. It was 24 Commerce Street, block 3001, lot 60. This is preliminary and final site plan. They had accessory outdoor storage. I know the resolution was on the Google Drive. I understand everyone had a chance to review it. Any questions or concerns? Don't see any ones. I think Mr. Girio is going to make a motion on that one.
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution, application 8/2020-S.
Second.
We have a roll call, please.
Sure, Ms. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Brendel,
Yes.
Committeeman Huber,
Yes.
Mr. Barnett,
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Lawfer,
Yes.
Mr. Wishna,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kessel,
Yes.
and Chair Tiger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Perfect. Three quick housekeeping things. Number one, RFPs will, the governing body on Tuesday, I believe, is going to be issuing publishing for RFPs for planning board, attorney, board engineer, board planner, and so forth. They'll be sent out on 11/12 or posting in the paper on or about 11/12 with the due date of December 1st. When they come in, Ms. Law will put on the Google Drive and send us a notice that are out there. If anyone has any questions or concerns, we can circulate and potentially pull up and review them in advance. If not, it'll be something we'll take action in their January meeting. Our next meeting obviously is December 7th. There is a chance we may need to pull up and have a secondary meeting in December. If that happens, we'll circulate, a couple dates and times for that. It'll probably be late in December if it becomes necessary. Third item for housekeeping is environmental update. As the board knows, Marissa moved over from an alternate position to be our environmental representative. She's been working with the environmental board. In fact, the environmental committee on December 7th is going to come for 15 minutes in the beginning of our meeting and talk about what they're working on and what they can utilize our help for in the coming year. So Marissa, can you give us a little update short on what's taking place?
Sure. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend their meeting, but I do have the minutes from Ally. So a couple of things, just pretty much everything has been postponed because of COVID. So the annual quarry walk, which typically takes place in the fall, that's going to be postponed to spring 2021, and a tentative date will be May 16th of 2021. And then Clean Community Day, they, again, were hoping to have a fall Clean Community Day, but that will also be postponed until spring 2021. An update about the trucks program. We have a recycling, the town has a recycling program with Trex, and essentially there's a partnership there. So, so discussion about, we get a free bench. So the discussion about the location. So it appears that that they want to put the bench in Veterans Memorial Park. So that should be installed there if it hasn't been already. And then lastly, the discussion about bike paths and the discussion about working with other towns to set up bike paths for Springfield.
Perfect. So if you would let them know, does any of the board have any questions on this matter?
Nope.
Perfect. So if you let the environmental folks know, Ally and so forth, that the board would extend the invitation for them to come on December 7th at 5:30. They will be first on the agenda. 10-15 minutes for you to kind of talk with Ally for the benefit of the board on what we can do to partner in 2021 together. Perfect. Let's move to the first order of business. This is a carryover application. This application was application 6-2020S, 65 Springfield Avenue Condominium Association, 65 Springfield Avenue, Block 301, Lot 3. This was the carryover for the front yard fence barrier that they were putting on. So Apu, if we can pull them up to the front. And while they're being pulled up, I'm going to go over to Mr. Disco. I think the board, Mr. Disco, kind of gave you some instructions, kind of call it marching orders, to work with the applicant to come up with something that works, both on a landscaping, both on the fence, and from signage with the DOT. So if you can give the board a little bit of update, I know they've had a chance to review your letter, but if you can give us an update, we would appreciate it.
So we did reach out to First Union County. Presumably it was a county road. Turned out it was a state, under state jurisdiction. We spoke to DOT, the local people that handle the permits for the Union County area and Springfield in particular. They didn't see a problem with us adding signage, but it has to go through a process which is reviewed by the Trenton people. So that is not a quick and easy thing, and it's not something that we would have had for this meeting. Nonetheless, I did speak to the applicant, and I believe the police are supportive of it, and the applicant will certainly testify to. They have no problem making the effort to interact with DOT from the engineering staff in Trenton to see if we can accentuate the existing signage. Near Victory Road, there is what's called a chevron sign. This is a yellow and black sign, which kind of draws the eye from a right to left motion, in this case, alerting them to a curve. But it certainly could be accentuated with curve signs, maybe speed reduction signs. All of those things, though, have to get DOT involved, since it is their right of way, and they have certain procedures to follow, none of which are quick. So I believe the applicant will talk to that and agree to do whatever is necessary to interact with them. And they are in favor of adding signage or pavement markings that will assist road users in not leaving the road. I think the next thing was that they retained a traffic engineer who's prepared to speak tonight. He did a calculation to determine what is the clear zone. The clear zone is the distance from the roadway or the cartway to which no barrier can be placed. And that is subject to speed limit, volume of cars, the geometrics of it. And that was determined by the applicant to be 20 feet. So they've pulled everything out of the clear zone, which is 20 feet from the curb line to the fence. So they've complied with that. The traffic engineer for the applicant, who I'm sure is getting on, is a former NJDOT employee. So he's very knowledgeable about it, was probably brought in because of that specific expertise. As far as the height of it, both the police and the applicant team agree that 8 feet is the preferable height to 6 feet. They can certainly provide additional testimony to that. The police did have a letter. I hope everybody got it. It only came in at 1:27 today. I didn't see it till just a couple minutes ago, but if you read it quickly, they basically are supportive of the 8-foot height. The concern was raised about moving the barrier to the other side. So the applicant will discuss that, but their structural engineer, who I had detailed discussions with, these things are meant to flex and dissipate energy. So these are not rigid structures. They will move. We did have one car crash into the building at 100 miles per hour was the estimated speed limit from the police. Obviously, other vehicles are not generating that speed when they hit. The distance, they're going to say the distance from the opposite side curb line to the building is too short for that. And the police have indicated that they are accepting of the reasoning to have it on the near side of the driveway. Everybody has different opinions of that, but it is outside the clear zone and they can speak to that. As far as the landscaping, I think they're receptive to providing landscaping. I had done research that showed that the Mozzarella Factory site plan, when they came before the board, had arborvitae screening all along that property boundary. Over time, some of it's been lost, not necessarily from vehicle accidents, but just the loss of time and some of the things. So replanting is certainly feasible. The applicant did indicate they approached the property owner for Mozzarella Factory, and they were receptive to reestablishing vegetation on their property that would not conflict. I spoke to the traffic engineer. I believe he'll say nominally vegetation is acceptable because if it helps to decelerate a vehicle in any significant way, it's going to be helpful. I'm not sure an arborvitae is going to reduce a vehicle that's going 100 miles per hour into a safe zone. No one's willing to say that, but the landscaping can help. The design that the applicant chose was one where posts and then cabling. So the vision was ensured through the barrier other than for the fence posts or the barrier posts. So landscaping can certainly be done in a way to match or hide the barrier on the spacing and certainly provide as much visibility as necessary. If there's a desire to have landscaping there, which I think most people would like it from an aesthetic point of view, and lessen the starkness perhaps of the posts, I think the applicant will accommodate that. And I don't want to speak for the applicant, obviously, but I hope I summarized most of the points. If I'm missing something, please remind me what I didn't address so far.
No, I think, Mike, that was a great overview of where we are and the progress that you've made with the applicant. So let's go to the applicant so they can kind of give a brief overview of where they are, maybe get the traffic engineer on to kind of explain to the board the location of the fence and how everything's going to work, and then kind of move to comments from the board. So Apu, if we can bring on their attorney and their traffic expert.
I brought in everybody I believe is associated with this application. Please let me know if I missed anybody.
I'm going to go to Glenn. Glenn, who is the attorney on the application? I forget. It's got Mr. King. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. King.
Good evening. Again, I appreciate Mr. Disco's overview. I think he pretty much covered everything. We know at the end of the last application, there were a number of questions that were raised by members of the board. We hope to be able to address those to your satisfaction this evening. I did want to point out that the realignment of the curb that was on the original application has been removed. We're not looking to do that at this point. The only variances required are for the location and height of the fences. And as Mr. Disco said, there's ample reason for both of those. Is it possible for me to have access to share some documents from my screen to yours?
Apu, can you pull up the I think the first one we would like up is the diagram.
So Mr. King can share his screen, or I can share it from here, either way.
Perfect. Okay.
Were all these submitted as part of the application, Scott?
There were updated documents that were submitted. Ms. Law, I'm not sure if you have everything that was submitted.
I just want to make sure. I want to make sure we met the 48-hour requirement.
I believe everything has been submitted. Was submitted on Monday.
Correct.
That would be 48 hours, so we're good.
They're revised. There's certain revisions to the plan which show the setback of the fence.
Scott, that's fine, Scott. All I want to do is make sure we meet the 48-hour. Anything that wasn't on file, we'll just try and mark it so that we have a rough idea.
Oh, definitely will. Yeah.
But if it was on file, then I don't care. We'll just, okay.
Sure. The first thing that I believe you have is the.
Well, how many exhibits do you have? Hopefully no more than about 4 or 5.
Not at all. We have updates to the plan, and I believe what I'm about to pull up has already been reviewed and is already part of the initial plan. I don't believe there were any changes to the.
Let's use the rendering, Mr. King, because I think that answers a lot of questions for the board. Let's go
So
for
we
the
have two
render.
renderings, and I'd also like to show, I have a Google Maps photo of the site. I just had it. What happened to it? Okay. Is that on?
You know, Apu can pull it up, and I would actually feel
There
more
were two
comfortable.
that were submitted that were revised this morning.
You want the rendition of the fence, just the drawing?
Yeah, here's, actually, here's one. Do you have that?
We see this. We see the exhibit,
So
Scott.
you can see that the fence has been pushed back from the curb line to comply with the clear zone requirements of the NJDOT on both sides of the driveway.
All right, but Scott, that's my whole question. Is this new? Was this on file? Did Jen have this 2 days ago?
This was not on file. This is new. These
We
were,
can't- I don't understand. You tell me, but we got a 48-hour limitation.
the only difference on this and one that was submitted for the last meeting is the location of the fence.
Which is important.
It is
Well-
also shown on the architect's rendition.
Let's
which-
let's use the one that Apu has. So
Sure,
it's-
there's one on,
Let me switch the screen share to the one that we have from the Google
Mr.
Drive.
King, let's go the one off Apu has, and you can talk about any of the changes, and Mr. Disco will help if there's any concerns.
Yeah, and then we'll make that a condition that you submit it.
Yeah.
I just don't want to get into a position, Mr. King,
sure.
of having somebody jam us up because we tried to do something creative and it's against all this stuff coming out from Trenton where they really don't know what the process is. And I understand if this was a normal hearing, I wouldn't even be talking to you about this. It'd be fine.
This was
It's not-
this was the initial rendering that was provided.
Oh, yeah.
And what you see here is the fence on the side of the building, the side of the driveway closest to the building is actually immediately surrounding the gas meter and gas line, with pushing back the fence on the opposite side of the driveway to make it 20 feet from the curb line. That what we're proposing on the building side of the driveway is to have a straight fence going from the front of the gas meters out, setting back the same 20 feet from the curb line. You can see that also in the architect's sheet, which was submitted on Monday, which should be no issue. There's a front elevation, what they call the front elevation, which shows the same side of the building, and it shows the location of those fences.
Okay, and how are we going to identify this exhibit that's up there now? What is it?
This is one that was submitted with the initial application. If you want to call it
Does-
A1, we can call it A1.
I'd love to call it A1 and we'll call it front architectural colored rendering. How's that? Is that do it, Mr.?
Sounds good. And I'm only asking that the board members keep in mind that the location of the fences will be set back somewhat from where they're shown on this diagram. And the fence on the building side of the driveway is now a straight fence, which you can see in the architect's plans that were submitted on Monday.
Mr. King, I'm going to make this easier for you, I think. And Mike Disco, it seems to me that if we stay with this stuff, he's basically responding to all of the things that were talked about. So we'll have him just put the testimony on. If you have it, if he submits additional exhibits, or even if they're here tonight and they wind up in your hands, then you can write up kind of a finding and a series of conclusions. We'll incorporate those in, assuming he gets an approval. We'll incorporate those in the resolution. And that way, everything will be on record. You'll have the revised plans and we'll be all set to go. Does that make sense, Michael?
That's fine.
You okay with that, Mr. King?
That's fine with me.
Just trying to keep it uncomplicatedly easy in light of what we're having to deal with. That's all, bud.
Not a
Okay.
problem. I'd like to call Mr. Uzair Syed first, who was qualified at the last meeting.
I'm unmuted.
Sir, I'm going to remind you that you're still under oath
Yes,
and you'll still tell the truth.
yes. I will tell the
Okay,
truth.
we're good. Go ahead, Mr. King.
Mr. Syed, One of the concerns of the board members at the last meeting was the location of the fence on the right side of the driveway as opposed to the left side. Can you explain the reasoning and why the fence cannot be placed on the left-hand side of the driveway along the side of the building?
Speaking purely from a structural point of view, this fence has a 5-foot long foundation. And this foundation basically starts at the point of the fence posts and goes perpendicular or in the direction of the vehicle's movement. If we place this fence next to the building, the issue that we get is that we quickly lose the space where we can put this 5-foot long foundation in there. So that's one of the issues that we noticed. The second thing, as pointed out earlier, was that the fence is designed to absorb energy, especially in a high-speed impact situation, and it's expected to move. Quantifying the movement is very difficult. All we want to do at this point is to make the fence flex as much as it can so that there is a least impact on the driver while stopping and arresting the motion of the vehicle. So this being said, there is a likelihood that in an extreme case, while fence is stopping the vehicle, if it's too close to the building, it might not serve its purpose fully and the vehicle might still hit the building. Of course, we have the cables to arrest the vehicle and get other fence posts engaged. But ideally, if it's a couple of feet away, like 10, 20 feet away from the building, then it works the best.
And can you also explain to the board why the location of the fence on the left-hand side toward the front of the building was adjusted as well?
So I was at site with our site civil engineer. And we basically looked into the situation, and there were some distance requirements from the roadway. And based on that, we noticed that a couple of fence posts might not fit in within that requirement. Now, this is beyond my area of expertise. I was only there as a structural engineer at the site. And as per our discussion with project architect, we decided to move a couple of fence posts next to the gas meter area where we were already placing 3 fence posts to protect the meter. So we decided to add a couple more over there. Of course, it's not the best situation, but it's probably the second best alternative that we had.
So, Mr. King, I'm going to interrupt you. That I think what your engineer and Mr. Disco and the police have all said is the same thing. What I'd like to hear is from the traffic expert to be able to tell us about the clear zone, that it's okay, it doesn't mess with anything that the DOT has to say with, and it's in line with what Mr. Disco would like. So I think we can leave Mr. Ziad there in case, but I think let's go to the traffic expert, then open up to the board, and the board can ask some questions.
Great. I've got Mr. Rashed, who needs to be qualified and sworn in.
Glenn loves doing that, so.
I'm sorry, he was qualified or he was not?
No, he needs to be qualified.
Oh, all right, let's do it.
He's a new one.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here via Zoom. My name is Maurice Rashed. That's R-A-C-H-E-D. I'm a traffic engineer. I've been doing this for about 33 years. I spent the first half of my career with NJDOT and actually.
Maurice, take a breath and let me swear you in first.
Okay.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in the proceedings before the board tonight, so help you God?
I do.
Your first name is Maurice. Spell your last name, Maurice, please.
R-A-C-H-E-D.
All right. And everything that you said so far was true. You're not going to change it now that I swore you.
I'm not going to change it. Nope.
Okay. Counsel, you want to quickly qualify him?
No, I think he's qualified. The board have any concerns? Nope, seeing everyone shake their head, I think we'll qualify him as a witness. And if you can give us some brief testimony on why this is okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, good evening. So I was retained to look into the safety and design of this fence. I did a field investigation. I met with the structural engineer, the architect, and the client, understood what they're trying to do, looked at evidence of past crashes to understand the dynamics of past crashes, And here's the result. And Scott, if I may, can I share a screen? It is what was submitted to the board. It is the latest drawing that shows the fence pushed back. I just made some markings on it so that the board can understand exactly what we did. So somebody needs to give me the opportunity, and I think I have it. And here we go.
Perfect.
So you're looking here at, I believe the board has this drawing. The roadway is here. The purple line.
Can I interrupt you?
Maurice? Thanks,
Yeah.
Jeff.
No, you're going to take care of it. Go ahead. I heard you doing it. Go ahead.
Maurice, what's the title of the drawing? What are we looking at?
The drawing is titled Proposed Security Crash Fence for 65 Springfield Avenue Condominium.
Okay, and you said it was submitted to the board. Which sheet is it?
And this one is sheet number A-100.
Okay, and is there a date on it, Maurice?
It has an original date of September 10, 2019. It has a revision date. If I may zoom in to read you the revision date, let me see if I can find out. If somebody else knows it offhand, they can chip in.
They're actually, I believe the one that you're looking at was revised on October 26th of 2020.
Actually, Scott, it has a revision date. Yeah, October 26th and then November 2nd. I see these dates right here.
Okay, and you've made revisions, and the revisions are all in living color on the upper left-hand side. Is that correct?
No, the plan has not been revised after you received it. So you have the plan I'm showing you. The
With
only
the colors
thing
on it?
I just,
His markups are the color markups.
That's what I was asking him.
That's
Yes.
correct.
So the colored markups are the revisions that you made, and it's all part of this, but you did it yourself. So that's okay, because that's
That is
something you
correct.
could have done. Okay, so just center it and then explain what they are.
very good. So the purple line indicates the edge of the travel lane. This is the sidewalk. The yellow line indicates the 20-foot clear zone that is required by DOT, which is also a national standard. The red line indicates the old location of the fence. The green line indicates the new location of the fence. So what this exhibit shows, it shows that we shortened the fence a little bit and moved it back so it clears the clear zone as required by NJDOT and federal standards.
Just for the record, the fence on both sides of the driveway clears that 20-foot zone, correct?
That is correct. There is nothing we're installing as far as fence within the clear zone.
And landscaping too. Is that
Excuse me?
correct? As well as any landscaping will not be in the clear zone.
There is plenty of space here for landscaping. That is correct. The answer is yes to you.
But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that there is existing landscaping within that clear zone. Is that the case?
There may be some very, very small bushes right here, Scott, but for the most part, the landscaping is right in this area.
Okay.
Along the red line.
So we will have you work out, and I think last time we agreed, Mr. King, that you will work on a landscaping plan with Mr. Disco to make it work.
Our client is willing to do whatever it takes to make the board happy as far as landscaping, and to make the police happy, because there was a concern about being able to see through the existing fence. I think there was a question from the police department about that, and we just want to make sure that whatever we do is going to make the board and the police department happy.
Yeah. Proposing smaller plantings and so forth. You'll work with them to come up with something.
We'll be happy to. And again, just for the record, I believe that the diagram that, or the plat that Mr. Rashed was working from was one that was subsequently updated on Monday. And the update shows that the back of the fence pretty much ends where just before that first parking space on the Mozzarella Factory's property. So where you see the two on this, toward the back of this plan, that's pretty much where the fence currently will end.
good.
There was a concern by Mr. Disco about the fence being close to some light fixtures on Mozzarella Factory's property. The fence will not be anywhere near those. I believe as part of this, one of those light fixtures is not working, and our client has agreed to help repair that light fixture on the adjoining property owner's property.
Perfect. Okay, I think it's a good time I just want to go back to Mr. Disco, Mr. Hughes, and then go to our board. Is that okay?
Sure.
Perfect. Mr. Disco, anything to add from what their testimony is? Anything to complement that would help the board? And if you can, maybe address anything else in the police email, for the board, because Mr. Rachel's not there. Maybe you can give some overview so kind of get some of his comments into testimony.
Yeah, Captain Rachel basically says he agrees with the effort to review by DOT the signage. He basically says he agrees that everything should be outside of the clear zone. These are universal things so far. He basically states that, in his opinion, based upon the fact that things were airborne, the 8-foot height should be there as opposed to a 6-foot height. Based upon the historic crashes, he believes it should be on the near side where it's shown as opposed to the far side, closer to the building, because of the fact that the barrier or the vehicle may still hit the building at that point. And he just said he has no issue with landscaping. He would like visibility into the driveway if possible, so that could be coordinated either by landscaping at the posts or by shorter landscaping. So to paraphrase him, I think everything that the Sergeant Westover and Captain Rachel have asked for can be accommodated.
Any comments also? So you're comfortable with designing some landscaping that works with the fence and the location?
Yes, I'm comfortable with everything that's shown, the testimony. I think the evaluation of which side on the driveway was a fruitful one. I think it was worthwhile. I think in this case, what the testimony is, because these things, again, a vehicle's going to hit it, there's going to be movement to the barrier, the posts, the cabling, and the entire system, that there's going to be deflection, there's going to be movement. The closer that is to the building, and if it's too close, you can still hit the building. So I'm comfortable what the testimony is and where it is. Obviously, further away would maybe be visually more appealing. I understand that.
Yeah. Okay. Keenan?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have much to add at this point. I mean, we're really focused on engineering issues, so nothing further from my perspective.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, this time I'm gonna open up to the board. If we can pull down the drawing or the exhibit, please.
Okay,
I want
so
to
I'm going to stop sharing my screen then. Is that what
Yes.
you're asking, Mr. Chairman? Okay.
Yes, please.
I will do that now.
But don't go anywhere because the board may have questions.
Okay.
So let me go through. The first question I'm going to go to is Mr. Huber.
Yes.
Any
So
questions?
I have no questions. Everything is met that I think should be met.
Perfect. Mr. Barnett?
No, I don't have any questions. I'm glad we took some time to improve the plan. Thank you.
Mr. Brendel?
No, I'm good with the changes. Thank you.
Perfect. Mr. Loeffler?
Yeah, I have a question. Remember last time I was concerned with of accident avoidance as opposed to the actual construction and landscaping. And one of the things that we were talking about, or I had mentioned, and what was supposed to be looked into, is additional lighting at the site. I know we were talking about signage and lighting, and I understand the signage is still a procedure. But as far as extra lighting, I didn't really hear that addressed. So I was wondering if there's any thought towards that.
Are you referring to off-site lighting or
I'm
on-site?
just talking about whatever could help the driver of a car to see the land, to see the fence from a distance, whether it be off-site or on-site.
Mr. King?
Well, that is not something that we had planned. We did not believe that either our I can ask Mr. Rached if he believes, as a traffic expert, that additional lighting on the site would have any effect on reducing potential accidents.
As far as lighting within the state right of way that would not be accepted by DOT. As far as lighting on the site, there should be no spillage on DOT right of way beyond, I believe, 0.2 foot candle. In my opinion, the lighting on the site is not helpful as much as a sign on the highway. And I think during the last hearing, board members expressed an interest in having the applicant seek or request NJDOT to improve their signage. And we're willing to commit to making that request to NJDOT. And I'll use my experience and knowledge of people to make that request. As Mr. Disco said, there is only one sign assembly. On top, there is a small chevron. At the bottom, there is a larger chevron, and it is not very visible. I think there is a lot that could be done to delineate that curve for anybody coming down the roadway, and we will make that request to the DOT. That, in my opinion, Mr. Lawfer, is a lot more effective than in improving lights on the building. DOT doesn't like lights because they interfere with the motoring public in terms of glare, and for other reasons, doing the request to the DOT is the right thing to do for the community, for the roadway, and for the board.
Perfect. Mr. King, obviously, as we talked last time, as a condition of approval, if the board should act favorably, Mr. Disco will monitor your professional's activities to make sure it's acceptable level that we're working towards it. If the DOT says no, it may be it is what it is, but we want to make sure there's a reasonable effort. So Mr. Disco will be the arbitrator of all, or whatever
We're fine with that.
I would add, Mr. Chairman, I just looked at Google Earth, the street view. There is a utility pole in the median between the two lanes of traffic there, immediately opposite the Mozzarella and 65 Springfield, the applicant's driveway. There's a Cobra light. I don't know if anybody knows what the term, but essentially one of those, the top of the pole lights comes down on the, I'll say the eastbound lane, which is not the near side lane, but the traffic going to Vauxhall. So there is a light there, a Cobra light from DOT. It's as spaced as close to the site in general, both lanes as possible. They could certainly consider, throwing a Cobra on the other side. I don't think that's typical of what they do. I don't know what the weight would do to it, but certainly it's part of what we could ask DOT. I don't think there's any opposition to asking.
So we'll add that as an opportunity for you to work with them on it,
Yeah,
or to
subject to
or to see if it's feasible too, if it's necessary. So we'll add that to your list, Mr. Disco, to work with the applicant.
I'm not suggesting we just do it because it's possible, but only if it's necessary. And as Mr. Rashad said, only if it makes sense from DOT's perspective.
And I want to be Mr. Disco that this light is malfunctioning, and that would be very easy to fix.
And I want to be clear to the applicant, this isn't Mr. Disco's responsibility to do. He's going to monitor to make sure the effort's on their side. So
Understood.
that are taking place.
And I also just wanted to point out that there is lighting toward the rear of the fence, which is the lighting that's on the property line between the mozzarella factory and the applicant's property. So it's not completely dark. There is lighting there.
Is that lighting visible to a driver? I don't think that lighting in the back would help anybody coming down Springfield Avenue going westbound.
Well, it's lighting that's on the property line between the two properties. That lights up the parking lot for the mozzarella factory.
Right, but I don't think that really helps the oncoming driver, because I think it's kind of, that lighting might be a little bit blocked and you won't be able to see it.
Aaron, I think Mr. Disco is going to take it as one of his conditions, put it as one of his conditions in the letter, and we'll add it in our resolution that they're going to work together to come up with a solution that if it's needed, that it has the appropriate lighting.
Okay, I'm good then.
Okay, Marissa? You're on mute, Marissa.
Sorry about that. No questions for me, thank you.
I guess it was too cold outside. You had to come inside.
It was.
Okay, Mr. Wishna?
No questions for the traffic engineer. I don't know if we had the architect on or not, but
Yes, Mr. Mirolanda.
Question I have, to get the desired effect on a long-term basis, is there anything that needs to be done to maintain the structure and the fencing material so that it, 10 years from now still does what it did the day it was built?
So before he answers that, I just want to make sure that he's been sworn in. He's on
I haven't
mute.
been sworn in.
Yeah, Glenn, do you want to swear him in? Because we did not qualify him last
I don't
time.
believe he testified last month.
No.
I did not. Sure. Sir, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in proceedings before the board tonight, so help you God?
I do.
You want to qualify him, Mr. King?
Mr. Marilana, can you explain to the board your educational background and professional licensing?
Sure. I graduated from Universidad Valle in Colombia. I've been working with James Guerra for 18 years, and I'm a licensed architect in New Jersey. And I've testified before boards before.
You want to spell your last name, sir, please?
Sure. It's Marulanda.
And your first name?
Ivano. Ivano.
Thank you.
I think he has the qualifications. Any members of the board have any concerns? I'm seeing no
License
one.
is valid. Is license is valid as of tonight as a license?
Yes, my license is valid and current. Yep.
And you regularly prepare plans before boards and appear
Correct.
before boards?
Yes, I have appeared before boards and I have prepared plans before boards.
Thank you very much, sir. He's all yours, Mr. King.
Thank you.
Mr. Marilana, I believe you heard Mr. Wishner's questions and concerns about the maintenance of the fence, the long-term durability of the fence. Can you address those questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's a concrete post with steel cable, so it's very durable materials. We could also ask Mr. Syed about his experience with that kind of post and cabling, but they require. I believe they require very little maintenance in terms of looks. In terms of keeping the structural, we can also ask Mr. Syed if he has any comments regarding that.
Definitely, I'll add a few bits to it. As Ivano stated, it's very durable fence. It's made of steel. It's going to be painted steel and concrete. The way we have designed it, we have slightly larger tube embedded in the concrete post and a slightly smaller tube, which can go into the larger tube as like a sleeve and gets welded on all four sides. The intent is in case of a crash, if the upper tube is bent or out of service, it can be removed easily by grinding the steel and can be replaced. Within the posts, we are using high strength 270 KSI steel cables. And the only issue that we can expect or any serviceability issue that we can see in future is probably of rust, which can be very easily maintained because it's all open and visible. It can be cleaned and painted, and just regular maintenance can ensure that this post would be functional 20, 25, or 30 years down the road.
Perfect. Mr.
That answers
Wishner?
my question.
Perfect. Mrs. Kessel, Sharon Kessel?
No questions. Sorry, I didn't know I was on mute.
Perfect. Mr. Schwartz?
I continue to have grave concerns about this application. And I'm not sure which of the applicant's experts is appropriate, but whomever is, please speak up. My concern the last time was, we're talking about those handful of severe incidents with high-speed crashes. And I'm concerned about the everyday citizen minding their own business, obeying the speed limit, hits a patch of ice, hits oil spot in the road, and now crashes into this barrier, doing either severe harm to their property in terms of their car or to themselves that would not otherwise have occurred. And I've not heard any testimony about what would happen in a speed crash at 20, 30, or 40 miles per hour, as I had requested. And I've not heard about any alternatives that were considered that would take into account the more normal speed crashes. And finally, I've heard no testimony about how many of such crashes exist. I mean, because if we're talking about 20 or 30 at an ordinary speed versus the 3 or 4 we've heard about at high speed, that will come into my mathematics as I figure this out. So I open the floor.
I think, Mr. Schwartz, I can address your questions if that's okay with everyone else.
Please do.
Okay. Very good questions, by the way. And these are things that I looked at and considered as I'm investigating this application. So you are correct. Some people may depart from the travel lane at 20 miles an hour, some at 30, some at 40. And I have seen evidence, at least based on testimony by others, that some at higher speeds. So this fence will protect the building and the driver if someone is going at a very high rate of speed. And I know I didn't get to your questions yet, but I'll be there in a second. So in a scenario where somebody's going at 80 miles an hour, loses control, and departs from the roadway at that very high speed, without the fence, they'll crash into the building. And they harm themselves and the building, and the harm to the building and to the occupants could be very severe. This fence is built to prevent that, to attenuate the impact about 25 feet, let's say, or 30 feet from the building, which would lessen the damage to the vehicle, which would be safer to the driver and protect the building. Now, your question was, and by the way, I'm an accident reconstructionist, and I've been accepted in courts testifying on motor vehicle crashes. Going back to your question, what happens if somebody's going the normal speed limit, let's say at 35 or 40 miles an hour, loses control because of ice, snow, rain, and so what happens in that case? Well, that's why, Mr. Schwartz, we do have that 20-foot clear zone. The 20-foot clear zone has that exact purpose, is that drivers that are driving at the speed limit or around that speed limit and they depart from the roadway, there is enough room for them to come back to the roadway. And that area is called technically the recovery zone. And being that this area is somewhat flat, it's a little bit of an incline, but flat enough to be, we call that a recoverable area. So if somebody's going at 30, 35, 40 miles an hour, a reasonable speed limit, what I would expect is that this person, if he or she leaves the roadway, they will hit the curb, they'll hit part of the berm area, and then they'll be able to recover and come back to the roadway. And that's where the 20 feet are useful. And that's why the DOT insists on having this 20 feet distance exactly to protect someone that is obeying the speed limit, that is supposed, based on science and based on experience, recover within the 20 feet. I hope I answered your question.
Mr. Schwartz, and I guess I'm going to go backwards now for a second, if I may, because having heard what you just said, I think it would be helpful to me to hear your qualifications in this area.
Sure. So I've testified approximately about 1,000 times before 150 boards in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. I teach at NJIT and TCNJ. Part of what I teach is exactly that, engineering mechanics, statics, and dynamics. I've testified in court, I would say approximately 12 times on issues related to safety and accidents. And when I was at DOT, one of my tasks was to review every single fatal accident in my region. And by the way, Union County was part of my region, that part of the state, Union, Bergen, Essex, and Passaic. So every fatal crash would come to me for review in terms of how to mitigate it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Andrew, anything further?
Not at this time.
Okay, so with that, I'm gonna take this opportunity to open it up to members of the public to see if there's any members of the public with questions on this application. So Pooh, if we can poll the public, see if there's any questions for any members of the applicant or our professionals if they have.
I'm not seeing any at the moment. If any member of the public wishes to ask a question, please put your name and address in the Q&A box so that the chair can recognize you.
I'll give it a little less than a minute in case there's any questions. If not, we'll close the public portion and remand it back to the board for some questions and concerns. While the board, we're seeing if there's any public, Mr. Disco, anything to add? I mean, do you think this satisfied or meets the definition from reading the police email? It seems like they support it. While it may not be the best looking thing in the world, you know, we have to deem on safety. I know I was out at the site and I saw tire tracks in the grass. So if that's the case, they were pretty fresh to me about a month ago. So,
Well, I think the design is done in a way to minimize the ugliness or the aesthetics of it. It's not a barrier, a solid barrier. It's mostly visible because of the cabling that was selected. I think that was intentional. Again, the post could be a color that mutes well, and we could hide some of it with the landscaping. So I think if there's going to be a barrier, and there's certainly the testimony for the need of it, then I think this is as best as you can do in terms of maintaining the visibility. Going back to the lighting question that Mr. Laufer had raised, you know, one of the things that we have to consider as engineers is the retroreflectivity of the signs. The signs are designed to take a headlight, reflect it back to the driver or the user of the vehicle, and to be seen with ample warning. So my guess is that Chevron sign is probably, you know, way more than 10 years old. So that would be something in it, because the headlights are going to be much more effective than any above pole light or anything like that for providing visual acuity to the driver or the user. So I think when the sign issue is brought up, we look at the retroreflectivity of whatever signs are there too. And there may be signs that are there that are just dated and aren't serving the purpose that they once did when they were first installed. So I think those are actually more critical than the surface lighting or above lighting that is provided, but that can all be umbrellaed into the discussion with DOT.
yep, exactly. Okay, I don't see any members of the public, so I'm going to take this opportunity to close this matter to the public and remand it back to the board to discuss the applicant. It seems like they need a front yard variance. I think Keenan has said he has no questions or comments from a planning standpoint on that. I want to kind of pull the board just real quick if there's any other questions for our engineer, planner, or theirs. So real quick, Mr. Huber?
No, I have nothing.
Mr. Barnett? And if you guys can't put on mute, if you guys can't get off, you can shake your head and I'll just say that you have no other further.
The only other comment I have is just to be very thoughtful about the landscaping. Try to to camouflage as much of the fence as possible, but still remain responsible to the safety and the visibility. So I would just I think the fence in general and the testimony I heard is a big improvement over what we had discussed last month. So thank you for the extra work. I think it's a better plan. Hopefully we'll make the area a little bit safer, and again, as best we can do to make it aesthetically pleasing as possible. I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Mr. Brendel?
No, nothing for me. I'm good.
Mr. Loeffler?
Nothing else, no.
Mrs. Ruggiero?
Nothing else, thank you.
Mr. Wishna?
Good, thanks.
Mrs. Kessel?
No questions.
Mr. Schwartz?
Just a brief comment. I appreciate the testimony because it did answer my questions. Mr. King, I would just ask that in the future, I raised these questions at the close of our last meeting. I shouldn't have had to draw out the answers to those questions. I would have appreciated if you had anticipated them and presented them through your witnesses without my having to ask again. So just if you would keep that in mind the next time you appear before us, I would appreciate it.
Okay, so that's a good point. That way we can get it out in the beginning. Okay, so seeing none,
Where'd you go, Jeff?
Can't hear you.
Mr. Barnett. Okay, I think Mr. Huber made a motion.
No,
you
nobody
want
made a
second?
motion. We lost
No.
you.
Mr.
lost
Huber?
Your audio went off for a while, Jeff.
We're using.
Okay. Mr. Barnett, you want to make a motion?
Sure. Let me grab the agenda here. Someone else make the
I can
motion.
hear.
I'll second it.
All right, I'll make the motion. I can. I'd like to make a motion for
Oh, here it is.
application.
I found it.
You found it? Okay, I want Mr. Barnett to do it. He likes it.
Yeah, Chairman and Board, I'd like you to consider the approval of application 6-2020S for 65 Springfield Avenue Condominium Association for preliminary and final site plan front yard variance for a fence. I have made the first motion.
Second.
We have a roll call, Ms. Law?
Hold on, Mr. Chairman. My
Yes.
suggestion is that it would be subject to all updates being made as discussed by the board tonight and as contained in Mr. Disco's and Keenan's reports. They'll all be subject to their final review and approval. The DOT is going to review signage, and again, that'll be final confirmation from Mike. 8-foot-high fence shall be installed on the near side to help protect the building and to the maximum extent possible. And they should consider additional lighting, but again, it's all going to be subject to it going through Mr. Disco, and Mr. Disco's report, along with Keenan's, will be made part of this resolution. And Michael, if you want to draft up some additional stuff that reflects the items that you talked about and the revisions that you need to have in front of you on the plans that we weren't able to review tonight, that's fine. And I think, board members, I suggest that those items be incorporated into your approval. I think that way it really ties it down to what you all are looking for.
I think that was perfect. Mr. Barnett, you agree with that adding to the motion that you made?
And my motion with everything council just said.
And Mr. Huber, you're still seconding it?
Yes, I am.
Okay, let's do a roll call, Ms. Law.
Mr. Barnett,
Yes to approve.
Committeeman Huber,
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes to approve.
Mr. Lawfer,
Yes.
Mr. Brendel,
Yes.
Ms. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Wishna,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kessel,
Yes.
and Chairman Tiger.
Yes.
Great, motion
Per-
passes.
Perfect. Let's go on to the next application. The next application is 9-20S. It's K&K Developers, 40 Church Mall, Block 209, Lot 1. This is for a minor subdivision of 2 lots. For the board's understanding, this is a church mall where the church and the cemetery are 1 lot. The applicant wants to make this into 2 lots. It's a very, very, very simple application before us. So maybe we can promote the attorney, Mr. Tansman, and Mr. Lanzafama to the front. So from the board's standpoint, this is what's before us is an application for just a minor site plan. You know, we're just reviewing the site plan. It has nothing to do with what the future development may or may not be with this application. We're just before us right now is for us to review whether they meet all the terms and conditions for a minor site plan, a minor subdivision for this application. Mr. Tansman?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, town professionals. I'm Brett Tansman, Wilf Law Firm, on behalf of K&K Developers, Inc. K&K is the contract purchaser of Block 209, Lot 1, which is also known as 40 Church Mall, and it's the Community Methodist Church. As the chairman indicated, we are just requesting a final approval of a minor subdivision to basically split Lot 1 into lots 1.01 and 1.02, so we can proceed with the purchase of the church, and the cemetery, which was really where the lot line would be drawn, would remain with the church. After reviewing the reports from the professionals from the town, Mr. Disco and Mr. Hughes, we don't see any concerns there. And this is a variance-free application. it conforms with all the zoning requirements. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Mike Lanzafama, who is a professional engineer.
We're very familiar with him, Council. Let's get him up and get it going. Okay,
Great.
Brett?
Turn it to you, Mike.
Michael, where are you?
I'm right
He's
here.
All right, Michael, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in the proceedings before the board tonight, so help you God?
Yes, I do. My name is
And what-
Michael Lanzafama. That's Lanzafama. I'm a licensed professional engineer, land surveyor and planner, licensed in the state of New Jersey. I'm a principal with the firm of Casey and Keller Incorporated, 258 Main Street, Millburn, New Jersey. I've testified before this board on numerous applications in the past.
Michael, you've testified as both a professional engineer and what else?
A professional land surveyor and a professional planner.
And all your licenses are valid as of tonight?
That is correct, sir.
All right, and you heard the proffer by counsel as to the application before the board. Do you disagree with anything that Brett indicated?
None whatsoever. We're simply taking lot 1 and block 209, which is in the GC zone, basically subdividing it into 2 parcels. Lot 1.01, which is on the westerly side, fronting on Church Mall at the intersection of Academy Green, which would end up being just over 21,600 square feet, would be then transferred to K&K Developers. All the existing structures would be demolished. The remaining parcel, the remnant parcel, lot 1.02, which would be just over 41,000 square feet, would be the existing cemetery and would be retained by the Methodist Church. We are providing 2 easements on our property, the lot 1.01, a 12-foot access easement along the north edge, which is adjacent to Route 78, and one along the new boundary line, 10 feet in width, that would provide access for the church for maintenance of the cemetery in the future. They would gain access directly from Academy Green, the driveway that currently exists there. So that's the purpose of those easements. The lots are fully conforming with the zoning.
And you'll draft up the language on the easements, and you don't have any problems with any of the recommendations in the board's professionals reports, do you, sir?
None whatsoever.
All right, and counsel, you don't have any problem with any of those reports, and you're willing to assist Mr. Lanzafama in drafting up the deeds and the easements in order to perfect this, is that correct?
Correct.
And did you get county planning board approval yet, Brett?
Not yet, not yet. That's in the works.
Okay, but it is coming. You don't see any problems with that. The county's going to
None.
sign off on. You're going to perfect it by map or by deed, Michael?
By deed.
Okay. Mr. Brett, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but I think that's all that the board and the chairman were actually looking for. So if you have anything else, or if we missed anything, by all means, I will promise to not say anything for a while.
Yeah. So the only thing, I'll open up to the, I want to go to Mr. Disco, but the only thing is that I'd like the meets and bounds to be reviewed by Mr. Disco and approved before.
Jeff, that's, Mr. Chairman, that's a standard condition. I will also review the documents for legal sufficiency, and Michael does it for all the meets and bounds, and we just make sure all the easements tie together as part of the deed package.
Perfect. Mr. Disco, so anything further, Mr. Tansman?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. Mr. Disco, do you have anything to add?
I really didn't have anything substantial. I had one comment about 2 different designations for a Methodist church. I didn't know if it was the same entity. And that's also the lot 4, the bituminous parking lot and owner. So if they wanted to just address that for the record.
Mr. Tansman?
Yeah, I need to check on that. Mike, did you have the answer?
Number
to that?
4 in my memo.
Yes. The lot 4, which is the existing parking field just to the southeast of the cemetery, would be retained by the church at this time.
Okay.
It is the same, it's basically the same entity.
Perfect. Mr. Hughes?
I have nothing else.
Mr. Hughes?
Well, it's a fully conforming, pretty straightforward subdivision, so nothing further from my perspective.
And that was going to be my comment to open it up to the board to see if they have any questions for any of the witnesses or our professional. So, Mr. Huber?
We're talking about the cemetery in the back, right? Am I correct? Not the one that's behind Charlie's building.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, the one in the
That's
back.
correct. That's correct.
All right. I want to make sure I was, yes, I have no questions.
Mr. Barnett?
No questions.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yeah, Mr. Hughes, I believe I saw in your letter a question about the maintenance and operation of the cemetery once the two lots are split. And I guess I have a concern here that we split the lots, the two buildings on where the church stands now get knocked down. We don't know what's going to go in there. And that property could be sold. It's now a separate property. It's not linked to the cemetery. The church would no longer be involved. And now we may have a cemetery that's not getting maintained at all. And I'm concerned about how we protect the town against that.
Mr. Schwartz, that was the purpose of the access easements. We're showing two easements, one along the northerly boundary, which is 12 feet wide, and one along the new lot line we're creating, which is 10 feet wide and overlays over the existing driveway that runs from Academy Green. So any construction that might occur on the new lot would have to honor those easements. So they give clear paths to the cemetery for maintenance.
Mr. Lanzafama, that wasn't my point. It wasn't access. It's
okay.
It's who is going to be responsible for maintaining that cemetery if the church winds up 5, 10, 15 years from now, no longer owning the adjoining property.
Mr. Schwartz, I can address that. It's my understanding that the church will maintain the cemetery going forward.
Well, okay. Well, two things. One, I'd like to hear from a witness to that extent and not counsel. And second, and I guess I go to our counsel, since they're going to do this by deed, is this something that we can put into the deeds for both lots, that whoever owns the adjoining lot is responsible for arranging for maintenance of the cemetery?
No.
I don't. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm thinking about it. Brett,
Can
do you
I,
have a position
because
on that?
otherwise we're exposing the
Follow-up
town,
idea.
by agreeing to this, we're exposing the town to a situation where at some point in the future, we're going to have a cemetery that is not going to have anyone maintaining it. It could become overgrown.
I get it.
We
I
may
get it.
have,
Brett-
I don't know if the counsel for the church is also on the line. If so, he can chime in, but I don't know if he's.
Can't we?
If not, we
can't
can
we have
follow
a-
up after this. with-
Jeff, I think the attorney for the church is on the line.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I have a solution, but I want them to just talk about it first.
Let's
Thanks,
get the attorney on, but maybe we have a condition of approval. We'll get a letter that before we sign off on the deed for the deed for the subdivision, that the church puts in writing that they own responsibility for the maintenance of the thing.
Or in the alternative, they set up an association for the cemetery, which
Yeah.
happens a lot. I understand exactly what Andrew's talking about, because you get these abandoned cemeteries and then you all of a sudden have citizens going out and cutting it and stuff. But is there,
Particularly in the downtown area that we're going to spend all this time and money on to redevelop as a highlight of our town.
I don't
This
see
would be
his
the
name.
worst spot to have this problem.
Brett, is he on?
I don't see his name as a participant here, but I don't think it's a problem if we could follow up after with the letter.
Mr. Tansman, what was the name of the attorney?
William Sheehy.
Okay, I do not see that name in the list.
All right, so Andrew, I think it's fine. Before the board signs off, before Mr. Disco gives approval to sign up on the deed, there'll be a letter from the church, just outline what Glenn said, that they will assume ownership and maintenance of the cemetery, and in the alternative, if not, have a homeowners.
A cemetery association.
Well,
The
yeah.
homeowners
Well,
don't say much anymore in those
It's
places.
a permanent.
Chairman, let's slow our roll here for a second, okay? Because a letter saying that is different than having the deed put in place before the association is actually in place. And I don't know that I'm comfortable simply trusting this when the only people who have bothered to appear tonight are the expert and counsel, who cannot speak to this with any authority.
I mean, the church is going to still own the cemetery, so I don't know what would change versus today, aside from K&K owning the adjacent property, they're still responsible for the cemetery.
And I've met with the church council on other things. I think a letter from the church council will be sufficient because they take care of everything as it is, and the church council should give us a letter.
Andrew, are you opposed to that? I think.
Okay, well, then let me ask this question. And again, I don't know if we have the right people to answer this. My understanding is on the property, which will now become the lot where the two structures are, those structures are going to be removed. What is the intention of what's going to go there?
We don't know at this time. Eventually, it'll be some type of a development, but we don't have a definitive plan as of yet.
So, okay, a development in which the church is not going to be involved.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm sorry. I am greatly troubled by this. We are setting the town up by going ahead with approving a deed first and trusting we're going to get what we need after.
Well, we're not approving the deed. We're not going to sign off on the subdivision plot or the deed, because that's the way he's going to do it without having a letter from the church. And they're also, and that's putting one thing aside. This developer still has to go for, whether rezoning or what.
Again, Mr. Chairman, respectfully, once we agree and once a deed is entered to subdivide these lots, what K&K does on their lot has nothing to do what goes on the cemetery lot. So they're going to develop, they're going to come back to the board independent of, and we're going to have no authority over them with regard to the cemetery unless we do something first.
But if I get if we don't sign the subdivision deed without having a letter from the church saying that they have ownership over the maintenance of it, isn't that acceptable? I mean,
well, again, the church even going to continue to exist once the building is taken down and this subdivision happens?
Yes.
This is part of a larger.
The church exists and they're based in Kenilworth now, and they will be maintaining the property in the future. The church is not going totally defunct. They're just transferring the location of the main entity.
I think if anything, it gives you some assurance that they're going to have by this sale, they'll have more liquid to go to maintain the cemetery. I don't see that the recourse would be different in I don't see the difference in the recourse, whether they own the cemetery or they own both pieces.
But again, counsel, look, I'm an attorney too. I represent clients. I get it. You saying it is not the same as me hearing it directly from a member of the church.
Yeah, but
we've agreed. We'll get you a letter from the church.
I appreciate that, but there should have been somebody here today. We can move on. I can't approve this application based on this.
Okay, that's fine. I understand. Okay, so with that, I'm going to take this opportunity to open up to members of the public. Apu, is any members of the public here?
We have some attendees, but I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A box. They may be for the last.
We'll give it a quick minute in case anyone wants to ask a quick question. But Glenn, one of the things that we would, if the board act favorably, that there would have to be something from the church that satisfies you and Mr. Disco that we have comfort in the form of a letter that they're responsible to maintain it. And Mr. Schwartz, it doesn't stop us when any developments there.
But again, respectfully, Mr. Chairman, it does stop us once these two properties are subdivided. The owner of the lot where the construction is happening will have no responsibility legally for what's going on at the cemetery.
True, but if they're building something
on one on the other than access.
True, but Andrew, Mr. Schwartz, if they're building something like whatever they're proposing to build there, they're going to want it to be and maintain be a certain nice.
Well,
and if it's not,
it would certainly be in their interest. I agree that the cemetery be maintained, but again, we're talking about whether or not we have legal authority when somebody comes in for planning board approval about what's going on an adjoining property that they do not own.
But they have maintained it all these years, am I correct?
Well, and additionally, the church had to sign off on this application. So it was the church's choice to either be here or not. And council certainly has the ability to represent the applicant and the application because it couldn't have been made without the church's consent.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand what Andrew is saying. I think we can put the condition in. And I would suspect, Brett, that you'll be able to get, or maybe Michael can get from the church or through council, Mr. Sheehy, I guess you said it was, you can get that document. And I'm even suggesting going an additional step, that if the church desires to not be in the cemetery maintenance business from their new location, they can set up an association. There are associations all over for cemeteries, and we can put it in. They are technically, Andrew, they consented to the application. They're not an applicant, but they consented to it. So you all can do things that are certainly appropriate. And I understand what you're saying, but I think we can tie it up reasonably well. It would have been better doing it Andrew's way. There's no question. But in all fairness to council, he thought that council might be here for the church tonight. So I don't know what happened, and there might have been some confusion. Who knows?
Okay, I see no members of the public, Apu, is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to close this matter and kind of remand it real quickly back to the board Mr. Disco, anything further to add? Mr. Hughes?
No.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Huber. Anything again?
No.
Mr. Barnett?
Nothing else.
Mr. Brendel?
No, nothing for me.
Mr. Loeffler?
Nothing for me.
Mrs. Ruggiero?
Nope, nothing for me.
Mr. Wishna?
No issues, thanks.
Mrs. Kessel?
No questions.
Mr. Schwartz?
I believe I've said my piece.
I know. I'm with you. Okay, so I have no questions other than the fact that I'm going to echo the fact that we will add in that some sort of communication will come before from the church that will satisfy our council and Mr. Disco that there's an awareness that they're responsible for maintaining it, and if they don't want to maintain it, come up with a solution that's acceptable to our board council and Mr. Disco. So with that, I would like to entertain a motion for approval of the application 9/2020 for a minor subdivision of 2 lots. Mr. Girio?
Sure. I make a motion to approve application 9-2020. Let's see the
S. Anyone second?
I'll second it.
Okay, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Ruggiero?
Yes.
Committeeman Huber?
Yes.
Mr. Barnett?
No.
Mr. Schwartz?
No.
Mr. Lawfer?
Abstain.
Mr. Brendel?
Yes.
Mr. Wishna? Mr. Wishna?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kessel?
No.
And Chair Tiger?
Yes.
Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses and 1, 2, 3 noes and 1 abstention.
So it passes. Great, Glenn?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. Also, I have a copy of a resolution that we have to look towards adopting tonight, if it's acceptable with the board. It was on the Google Drive. Mr. Keynes wrote the resolution. Obviously, the resolution would be amended to incorporate what was the condition of approval, that obviously they, all the basic stuff that's in the resolution, but to include that they must provide evidence from the church that the church is going to maintain the cemetery, and if not, find all their alternatives before any subdivision deed can be followed. Mr. Keynes?
Yes, it would be that, and subject to Mike Disco's reports, and we'd have to review all easements and subdivision documents and the like, but that's kind of standard stuff now that we've actually gone through that, Mr. Chairman.
So if the members of the board can take an opportunity, I know it's on the Google Drive, you had a chance to review it. if I can entertain a motion to adopt resolution with the additional condition that Mr. Keynes gave, as well as the council's name needs to be referenced into that resolution, that Mr. Tansman appeared before the board.
So moved.
So can we have a second? Mr. Huber seconded it, I believe.
Yeah, second.
We have a roll call?
Ms. Ruggiero?
What are we doing again?
What?
I'm sorry, what are we approving?
We're adopting the resolution of approval tonight.
For what? For KK or the other one here?
For KK, for the subdivision.
The one I just voted no for?
Yes.
So I can vote no for this one too?
You
Well,
can't.
yeah, you won't vote.
Okay.
Well, when was the resolution?
It's on the Google Drive. If you want to take a minute to, it's been on the Google
Did
Drive.
it happen? Was it put on there in the last 5 minutes after we just
No.
debated the?
No, it was put on in advance. From time to time,
It's not under the application, it's under resolutions.
it's under resolution.
Then I
Can I
never,
ask, sorry, why are we adopting it tonight?
and I'm not going to pause to review it now.
Well,
I'm just going to.
Why the governing, the application needs to be subdivided in order for potential redevelopment activities to take place by the governing body in the future. Since we don't meet until another month, it doesn't allow the governing body to take certain actions.
What actions does the governing body want to take?
There is the potential of looking at this for a study for redevelopment.
And what's the urgency that they do it before the next time we meet?
Because we don't meet
So
until
what is the township committee's urgency? As the mayor's rep, I was not informed that there's any action or any study being planned for this. So I don't have any direction from the mayor that the township committee is interested in doing anything with this property at this point. So I don't know why we're planning to have this vote we just have, and then also approve this resolution minutes after we just had the vote. I don't have any clear direction, any direction at all. The township committee, and I'm the mayor's rep, has not said any word about this to me. It seems like this is being moved through very, very quickly here, and I don't understand why. I would recommend to the board that we do not approve this resolution. And if the mayor and or the township committee would like to communicate to me as the rep, I'd be happy to bring that information to the board at our next meeting.
that's fine. We'll table it, Mr. Barnett. Let's move on to the next application. The next application is application 10-2020S, BP North America. Can you please have them come up? It's for 9 and 21 Mizell Avenue, Block 811, lots 1 and 8.
I believe I have the attorney. If we can, I don't know if there's anybody else that we need to bring up.
I have an engineer and a planner for this evening.
What names am I looking for, ma'am?
You're looking for Brian Ines as the engineer and John McDonough as the planner.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And there's John.
I'm here
And
too.
there's Brian. We're good to go, Mr. Chairman, whenever you're ready.
Sure. Okay, go ahead. Present your case, please.
Thank you. Before I begin, I just want to confirm notice is adequate and the board has jurisdiction to hear the application this evening.
Yes.
Mr. King and Ms. Law?
Yes, I reviewed it. It was fine.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, board professionals. Thank you for hearing this application this evening. The applicant BP Products North America is seeking site plan approval for proposed minimal site improvements, which includes additional parking and installation of 2 electric charging stations. No other changes are proposed on the property at this time. The applicant is also seeking variance relief pursuant to section 35-15.5B7 of your township code, where no accessory structure shall be permitted in any non-residential zone where the applicant is proposing these 2 charging stations, each as an accessory use to the existing gas station with convenience store. The property is located at 9 and 21 Meisel Avenue in the GC zone and is approximately 21,700 square feet. There is presently an existing BP gasoline service station with 4 fuel pump stations, an overhead canopy approximately 2,100 square feet, and a mini mart approximately 630 square feet. The applicant is excited to present this application this evening as it will be the first of what it hopes to be many EVC projects throughout the state of New Jersey as its green initiative. So we would consider this property project to be their so-called flagship. I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but Governor Murphy signed into law beginning of this year legislation establishing statewide goals and incentives for increased use of electric vehicles and charging stations throughout the state of New Jersey. So this supports that initiative as well. I have 2 witnesses, as I mentioned, Brian Ines of Bowler Engineering, who will present expert engineering testimony, and I have Mr. John McDonough, who will present professional planning testimony. We received various township professional reports, including the board engineer's report dated October 28th, and also the board's planner's report dated October 30th. I just want to confirm there are no other reports.
Nope.
Thank you very much.
We can you had a chance to review the reports. Do your professionals have any difficulties with any of the recommendations other than the comments that Michael and Keenan will make during the ordinary course?
No,
Do you have any?
not,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, counsel.
No, they do not.
Okay, so you're good with their reports?
Correct.
Okay.
If there's no other housekeeping, we can put on my first witness.
Yeah, I think the board is familiar with these applications. You know, we just had one earlier in the year. If you can give us an overview of the application, a brief overview, and please focus on what types of cars are going to use this. We have a Tesla one. You know, is yours going to be Tesla, GM? You know, we want to try to see what the overall theme is going to be and which ones it's going to service.
Sure, I'll have my expert engineer come up. Brian?
Yep, I'm here.
You want to swear him in, Mr. Kines?
Yes, ma'am. Brian, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in the proceedings before the board tonight to help you God?
I do.
What's your name, sir?
Brian Ennis, BryanEhnes.
Brian, by whom are you employed?
Bowler Engineering.
And are you an engineer with them, or what do you do for them?
Yes, I am an engineer.
And how long you been working with them, Brian?
About 10 years.
Okay, and you are licensed in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, for the last 5 years.
And your license is valid as of tonight?
Correct.
And you regularly prepare applications and appear before boards or represent boards as part of your practice, Brian?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
I think it's fine. Any members of the board have any questions or concerns? I think he's a qualified person. Seeing nobody, let's go ahead.
Would I be able to get access to share my screen?
Brian, is all the stuff that you're going to put on stuff that's already on file?
Yes, it's actually just the site plan documents that were submitted.
I'd rather our folks Apu do it, so that way I have confidence that it's the not that you would think that you would do anything wrong, but it's the one that the public had the opportunity to see if they wanted to.
Yeah, that's not a problem. So if you can refer to the site plan set, yes, perfect.
And just direct how to zoom in on what you need to show.
Okay, yeah, and just for everyone's benefit, this is the site plan set prepared by Bowler Engineering. It's revision 4, last dated July 31st of 2020.
Thanks,
And
Brian.
if you could just zoom in a little bit to that aerial map.
Give me one moment. Let me switch this, and see it better.
Brian, the board is pretty familiar with where this is and stuff. I think the chairman will kind of direct you a little bit through it since we're only adding a couple of fueling stations. You can probably cut a little bit of your testimony.
Yes.
I know you want to be thorough. I know that's how you bowler guys are. I get it.
If that's the case,
That's all right.
you can go to C-301. We'll just jump right into it.
And if we're going too fast, one of the board members will yell at me anyway. So then we'll know that it wasn't your fault. It was all mine, Brian. So don't worry about it.
Got it. I appreciate that. So the existing site, as we said previously, is a BP gas station. There are 4 dispensers, 8 fueling positions, and it has a canopy and a small building, which is about 630 square feet. The number of proposed charging stations are 2, and you can kind of see in the screen in front of you that it's the 4 spaces that are not ADA in that row of 5. There's 4 spaces that are delineated, and then a 5-foot striping in between each to access the charger. So the small rectangle you see at the end of the striping just off the curb, those are the actual charging stations themselves. There are no impacts to any other areas on site, with the exception of, if you see to the left of your screen there, which is Plan North, or not Plan North, but North. You can see there's some work over there for the ADA ramp, and that is basically just to bring this site further into compliance with ADA regulations. So the parking spaces, there's 4 for the charging station, and then also based on conversations with Mr. Disco after his letter was issued, we have delineated 4 additional spaces, which under existing conditions are currently being used, but we want to delineate them not only so people know they're there, but obviously for safety. So if you can actually scroll a little bit to the left and zoom out slightly. The 4 spaces, just so you know exactly where we're talking about, there's one in the top right corner of the plan here near the trash enclosure. And then there's one on each side of the building that is not where the dispensers are. So you can see 3 U-shaped bollards on either side. There's a space next to each one of those. And there also is a 4th space along the concrete curb in the bottom left corner. So as part of this application, we are actually adding spaces, not only for the charger, but delineating spaces on site that previously weren't delineated. So in terms of what is actually being proposed, again, we're proposing the 4 spaces for charging, all the associated equipment. The spaces are 9 by 18s, again, with the 5-foot in between each of the 2 spaces for access to the charging station. The area that we're focusing on, again, is the dark gray area to the right of the screen, and the additional equipment is a little further to the right and towards the bottom 2 spaces, which is where the equipment will go. And then if we can go over to sheet, let me just get the correct number. Sheet 701. As part of the request from Mr. Disco and his letter, and based on conversations we've had over the last few days, the equipment and the chargers that you see, the largest piece of equipment on the concrete pad is about 6.5 feet tall. And then the charging stations themselves are 7.5 feet tall, with a lot of the top of the charging station itself being open air. Due to this, we are shielding and creating a buffer between the right-of-way and the adjacent property, which is Walgreens. And we are doing that by providing evergreen shrubs that originally were proposed to be 3 to 4 feet in height, but at the request of Mr. Disco, they will be increased to 6 feet in height. There are 2 light poles that you can also see on this plan. They're basically one to the top of the 5 spaces, one to the bottom of the 5 spaces. Those are locations of approximately existing light poles. They are just being reconstructed. New lights are going in, LED, and they're basically just being realigned to shed a little bit more light on where the new spaces are going to be. And just to kind of give the quick update in terms of what equipment is actually there, there are 2 charging stations, 2 power cabinets, 1 transformer, 1 switchboard, and 2 circuit breakers. And to kind of go back to the question that was asked earlier, is the vehicles that will be able to charge, there are 2 separate connections for each charging station. So one will be for primarily the US made cars and the other will be for the European cars. So each charger has 1 of each charging connection basically. And the Tesla has its own adapter to be able to utilize these, but there is not one geared towards a Tesla specifically. In addition, we are slightly increasing impervious, and we are currently having discussions with Mr. Disco to make sure that that increase, whatever stormwater management facility or measure we take, is acceptable to Mr. Disco. And then just to give a little bit more information, these are the faster speed chargers. So they're 15 minutes typically is about what the charging would be for these. And then the one question was asked about phasing the installation, and due to each charging station only having 1 of each type of connection, and just to be more efficient in terms of getting power, we've met with the power company already. It just makes sense to provide 2 charging stations for the 4 spaces, and should one not be used, they can always change 2 spaces to normal car spaces. But the idea now is to have them installed now. That way you have 2 of each type of connection, and it's just more efficient for the installation of the actual equipment for the charging stations. I had a lot more to say, but that's kind of my cliff notes. But I'm certainly open for questions if there are any.
Have you had a chance to review the letter by Mr. Disco and Mr. Keenan, Mr. Hughes?
Yeah.
Any, you agree to everything in the letter, to working with them to make sure it's satisfactory to them?
Yes.
Perfect. Mr. Disco?
I'll try to be brief. I'll just go through my memo, the things I just want touched on. In comment number 1, there was a future phase indicated, and I don't know what the future phase is versus what we're looking at on the site plan.
Yeah, there is no future phase. It'll just be what's being proposed, and we don't need the 2 cabinets that were being shown as future. So those are just going away.
Okay. I think I had commented that, one of the things that we realized when we did the Tesla, and what I learned at League of Municipalities, is as these electric charging stations become available or shown on sites, they can take away from the traditional parking. So before the introduction of the 4 spaces, we had discussed signage that would be dual, meaning traditional parking and the charging, just like Tesla did. So do you have any comment on that, or the addition of the 4 spaces would render that not necessary in your view?
We believe that adding the 4 spaces would no longer make that necessary. So BP's preference is to have them signed as charging station only. And due to the existing use being on site already, operating with those spaces that are now actually delineated on site, we feel that's enough parking for the operation. And we also, in addition to those 4 spaces, have the 8 fueling positions that someone can be fueling up if they need a parking space as well.
Okay, those were the unanswered things, so I'll defer now to Keenan and then respond to the board.
Yeah, so obviously they do require that variance for the accessory structures in the front yard, which I assume we'll hear from Mr. McDonough about. In our letter, we did also have the same concern as Mike with respect to parking and how to sign that. It sounds like that's being addressed by the additional spaces being provided. We did have a question about the signage on site, and I don't know, Brian, if you were able to do a calculation, an aggregate calculation of signage, just to ensure that the site remains compliant with the maximum of 48 square feet. Were you able to do that?
I don't have a specific number, but based off of my knowledge, we are under, but I can certainly confirm that to make sure there's no issue with the installation of those signs.
Okay. And then otherwise, we had just asked for some additional testimony on the landscaping, which I think has been provided. And as you heard, they did increase it to a 6-foot planting height, which seems sufficient in terms of creating a visual screen. So with that, there's nothing further from my end.
Okay, so let's go to the members of the board to see if they have any questions from this witness. Mr. Schwartz, I'll go with you first.
I have no questions.
Mr. Huber?
Yeah, first of all, I go to BP all the time. They park all over there. They don't use the parking spaces. So, I mean, the parking spaces, I disagree with the parking spaces. And we're supposed to be going less impervious, and he's increasing his. The township committee had talked about it a few years ago, and we want less, not more. That's what
So,
I argument.
Mr. Huber, that's a good point. Mr. Disco, could we approve it with like shading it and saying for future development, so that way if there's a need for it, they can do it?
Well, I think you certainly could do that, but it's either all or nothing in the sense that if you're going to have electric vehicle charging, you have the additional coverage issue. Now, the coverage could be made a non-impervious. It could be made pervious. They could obviously and have to provide some sort of mitigation, whether it's a structural, whether it's underground, whether it's a non-traditional technique. As Mr. Ennis had testified to, we have discussed this and they do have to do that. I think Mr. Huber's just, talking about it from the standpoint that lot coverage is being increased. But you don't get the electric charging in the current pavement alignment without the bump out of the thing. So I think that's the trade-off to get electric charging, which is, as the attorney introduced, it seems to be a goal of environmental sustainability reason for environmental sustainability reasons, that you have to have the bump out of some sort of coverage, whether it counts as a lot coverage or not, or an impervious coverage. That's a separate matter.
And I'll just say I agree with Mr. Disco. It's a balancing act when it comes to increasing impervious for the electrical vehicle spaces. The other ones, that's really just a matter of formalizing parking spaces as they're currently being utilized on the site. So numerically, it may look like an increase in parking spaces, but it's kind of just how the site's operating today. And they're going to go ahead and stripe those and formalize those areas, which I think makes sense.
I've been to the site multiple times. I get gas there as well. I even went the last 2 weekends, and both times I saw employee counts of only 2 or 3, but in both times I saw the vehicles parked at each end of the building, as 2 of the 4 that Mr. Ennis just suggested. I also saw, and I used some, historic photography, and there's when you go to Google, I saw a parked vehicle where the trash receptacle is as well. I don't often see one necessarily near the corner where the 4th spot was, but the other 3 are historic parking spaces that are utilized. Currently on the site, there's only 2 spaces, one of which is striped handicap and one of which is striped traditional. So there's really now only 1 striped parking space for employees and consumers of the mini mart that are not purchasing gas.
So could we design this a little bit with some different material to help with the pervious coverage or something?
Yes, that's one of the options. It could be constructed with pervious materials that wouldn't count as lot coverage, and those by nature basically drain to the subsurface and are accommodated that way. That's a design element. It's certainly an option for the design team as well as other traditional ones. They could put an area drain and a dry well or seepage pit in that same area. So they do have, it should be noted that as a gas station, they do have some mitigations historic that went for ground and soil mitigation. So I'm not sure they want to have disturbance of subsoils, so that may enter into the equation as to how they address it. I'm not knowledgeable enough to discuss or to understand what those issues may be. The applicant would have to come up with that. But yes, there are options, Mr. Chairman.
So counselor, is that something your client would be interested in doing? One of our things, what we do at the town level is we're trying to avoid impervious coverage, especially in that area. A lot of that area floods where the kind of jug handle is to turn. I think it would be a good way to help mitigate it. I'm sure Mrs. Ruggiero would jump all over from the environmental standpoint that the committee 100% encourages that. So I want to kind of hear what your client has to say.
Can I just have a few minutes for a sidebar?
Sure, it's a good opportunity. I know that some members of the board want to take a quick break, so I'm going to say it's 7:17. We're going to take a 3-4 minute break.
Hello, Andrew. Glenn.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
You staying home? Or are you going in once in a while?
I haven't been in probably 3 weeks. I need to go back soon to at least exchange files.
I think that's all we can really do, buddy. It's just not getting better, and you're going into the belly of the beast almost, aren't you?
Well, except that honestly, there are some days when I get better social distancing in the office than I do at home. So
Yeah, but at least you know where most of home was for the most part.
yeah, but no, I mean there are very few people in the office. I'm not worried about that.
I got a couple of, I'm representing a county college now, and my president is a PhD in biology. And his whole problem isn't necessarily the number of people. He's saying a lot of the air handler stuff that you have in buildings. And I don't think you've been to my office, but it's 3 stories over parking. It was one of those, put the parking underneath. So we have the stuff up on the roof. I don't know that they have HEPAs or whatever filters going on. And what I'm being told,
I'm gonna, we're still with the public, so I'm gonna bring us back on. If everyone can put their cameras back on, who's on, and we're gonna ask the applicant that it's 7:24. If you've had a chance to talk to your public counselor.
Yes, I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and if you can let us know your thoughts and concerns.
Certainly, I'm going to have a testimony through Ryan.
Yes, BP is acceptable to work with Mr. Disco. We don't have a solution to present to you at the moment, but should this be voted in the affirmative, we would certainly work with Mr. Disco to come to a solution that all parties are in agreement with.
Perfect. I think Mr. Disco's been the arbitrator of all, and I think the Environmental Commission would be very happy that that the board is in forward thinking to try to make this a site where it's more responsible from a drainage standpoint. So, Mr. Disco, you're comfortable with taking it on as you do everything that we ask you to make sure that
we included in the memo. We had the discussion that we would address it. This just focuses that discussion.
Perfect. I forgot this was Mr. Huber, so forgive me, Mr. Schwartz.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Barnett.
No, happy with this.
Good. Mr. Brendel.
Nope, I think it's good.
Mr. Loeffler.
A quick question. I just noticed that most of the work is going to be performed on Lot 8, which used to be deemed residential property in the past. Just curious if this will affect any other surrounding properties that are also zoned to be residential.
No, the only other property in this block, which is surrounded by Maple, Measle, and Morris, is the Walgreens property.
So has the zoning on this lot been changed?
I am not sure.
I have a planner coming up, so he can testify to that, Mr. Loeffler.
So let's table that, Mr. Loeffler, and if you don't feel that your question got answered, we'll bring it up again. Is that fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. Mrs. Ruggiero?
Nope, I'm good.
Mr. Wishna?
I do have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
The ADA space that's being added alongside the 4 spaces for the charging station. Did I hear correctly that the one ADA space that's existing will become a non-ADA space?
The requirement for the number of spaces, which is 25, requires 1 ADA space. So the existing one is being taken away, but we're proposing the new one in another location.
So we're proposing the new one as far away from the building as possible?
We have it so that, let me just pull up the plan real quick. Oh, can you actually pull up the site plan? Sorry.
One moment.
But essentially the idea was to push kind of the ADA space in the back corner to limit any crossing closer to the driveways. So even though it's a little further from the building, our thought is that there's less conflict in terms of cars coming in through the driveways and entering the site. So we kind of push it in a way that it'll make it easier for crossing from the space to the ramp that we're proposing.
The ramp, okay, explain that to me, because I'm looking, and I keep turning my head because I have another monitor up here. I'm looking at the existing photo of the building, which I am familiar with.
Mhm.
Doesn't appear like a wheelchair is getting between an ice machine and a stack of product that's outside. It does not appear that the curbing is ADA compliant at this building.
Yes,
So how is someone getting from here into the building anyway?
Yes, so that's going to be, those items are going to be relocated. So that whole path is going to be clear now. It's not reflected on this plan, but that's part of the application. Just anything miscellaneous in terms of garbage cans, ice machines, and things along those lines, vending machines, those will all be relocated to not be in the path of travel.
Okay, so the ramp into the building will be completely ADA compliant. You've got enough clearance, and vehicles that are coming up to fill up won't, people that will have to traverse from this ADA space. This is as safe a path of travel as possible.
This is the space and the location that we feel is safer than where it was under existing conditions. If you can kind of see this exhibit or the site plan, by tucking it away here, you limit, like I was saying before, the cars kind of going around the site. You don't have an issue where you're crossing too close to the driveway. So typically you want the ADA space as close as possible to the building. But in this case, in this instinct, we feel that having it over here will just be a better alternative than trying to fit it as close as possible to the door.
Okay. And then same line of questioning. I'm not familiar enough with the charging stations. If there is a ADA vehicle or vehicle being driven by someone into that ADA compliant space, can the charging station equipment reach that space?
No, in that case, the spaces themselves for the charger are ADA compliant.
Okay. That's
So
what I got.
essentially,
Yes,
you can
got
park
it.
in any space. We have that
Any of them.
striping there, which matches the access. So
Understood. And then lastly, I do know there's some piping or monitoring wells that seem to be coming out of the ground there. I don't know if that's due to an ongoing remedial action plan or some kind. Is there a proposal to relocate any of that, or is that being currently utilized? Seems like it's kind of in the path of where some of this is going.
yeah, anything that's being affected as part of this development, we have an environmental consultant on board to make sure that anything that is touched is either replaced or relocated as needed. This was also something that myself and Mr. Disco had a conversation about as well. So we can certainly provide any information needed, but BP is well aware and they will make sure that none of that is affected by this development.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, piggybacking
Absolutely.
on Mr. Wishner's comment, tonight that we had that testimony that they're going to add up to 4 striped spots in alternative locations, and I think they're shown on this plan that we're looking at. So there is the possibility that the new striped space at the, I think it's the south side of the building, the one that's on the screen now, in the number 1, identifying 1 parking space. It's possible that we can entertain that as the handicap. Mr. Ennis would just have to, tell us that the grades would work. I don't know why they wouldn't. Again, a handicap space is typically wider than the traditional space, so you may cut into the aisle width, but it's something that could be looked at to move the handicap space or the accessible space closer to the building without making
Yes.
a judgment on it.
Yes, we can certainly take a look at that. Our concern is just, as you said, the width getting further into where the path of travel would be, but that's certainly something we can look into.
Right. As you still have this plan up, I see the location of the relocated vents, which you alluded to earlier. I mean, just from a aesthetically pleasing perspective, would it make sense to try to screen those off with additional landscaping as well? Because I mean, I think that would be the first thing you see. from Mizell Avenue, right?
Yeah,
As
we can
opposed to-
continue. No, agreed. We can continue that landscaping strip kind of to wrap around the vents as well. We will just make sure we have the proper separation in terms of vent operations and BP standards, but we can certainly do something to increase the buffer and decrease the visibility from the right of way.
Okay.
That's fine. We can leave that with Mr. Disco to leave as a condition.
We should probably identify this, what we're looking at should be an exhibit, I would think, marked.
I think that
This actually was not, this was not the exhibit that that Brian was testifying to earlier. So this should not have been brought up to the screen. I'm just realizing this now. So
this is a new one, Counselor?
Yeah, and it wasn't submitted within 48 hours, so I don't want to keep it up.
I don't either, but what we could do is make this a required submission.
Yeah, that I agree. Yeah,
Both application, and that way it'll all be in Mr. Disco's hands and not the board's. This was just, okay, so we won't mark it, we won't do anything. This is to give Michael an idea of what everybody was talking about. How's that?
Sounds good.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that'll be part of our submission. That was basically just showing, like you said.
Stop smiling like this.
We're ahead of the game. We already got it ready to go.
Okay, so seeing no other members of, well, actually, no, Sharon Kessel. Ms. Kessel, did you have any other questions?
No questions.
Okay, and I don't have any. So Counselor, if you want to bring up your final witness to kind of talk about the planner for the variance for the accessory structure, for the justification.
My next witness is Mr. John McDonough, who will be testifying in his capacity as a professional planner. And I believe he's testified here previously, very recently, actually.
He has. John, let's swear you in. Put your right hand up, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in the proceedings before the board tonight, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Right, and John, you were previously qualified before the board. You still are a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, and your license is still valid as of tonight.
Correct. To all
Is
of
that
you.
all right, Is that all right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I agree. I think he's a qualified expert and we can hear him. Any members of the board have any questions or concerns? Seeing none, go right ahead.
Take it away, Jennifer.
Absolutely, John.
Okay, so we're here for one variance. I actually did submit, I think we submitted some photographs just to show how the site marries up with the surroundings. If we want to put them on the screen, great, but I think Brian has really laid the predicate here to safely conclude from a planning standpoint that the application satisfies the one form of relief that it needs here, and it's actually interrelated relief as called out in your planner's report with respect to having those accessory structures in the front yard and having accessory structures in a non-residential zone altogether. This is all reconcilable under the flexible C balancing test, whereby the benefits of the application as a whole substantially outweigh the detriments towards the project positives. This is certainly going to advance the broad planning goal and your own master plan goal for environmental protection, preservation, all the sustainability goals and green technology goals that we see as a common thread in all planning literature today. As you heard, this is going to be a flagship for BP here in New Jersey, and the starting point was right here in Springfield by virtue of the emphasis on sustainability and environmental protection and the like. So I think that's an important consideration as well with respect to the positive criteria. Certainly, this is going to advance multiple purposes of the land use law. We always have the catch-all. Purpose A, the promotion of the general welfare. This is going to provide an additional service use along a service road, serving the public good in that regard. There are about 4 or 5 purposes of zoning that have an environmental aspect to it. All of these are advanced as well. That would go towards purpose A, purpose E, purpose G, and purpose N as in Nancy under the municipal land use law. On the negative side, I think it's been well vetted that all relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public. This is a non-residential area. I think one of the board members here on the screen had a good question about whether this lot was still a residential lot. It's not. This is a property that is in the GC zone district, your general commercial zone district, so it is not a residential lot. And as you heard, the surrounding neighborhood is non-residential as well. the predominant land use that is, I'll say, impacted by this particular development is the Walgreens, which engulfs the subject property. So in terms of having a accessory structure in the front yard, whenever we look at reconciliation with the zone plan or the impact of the zone plan, we look at the word intent or the intent behind that regulation. And as common sense would say, the reason why from a planning standpoint, we typically don't want accessory structures in the front yard is that they would overpower the primary structure or the primary use. Here, I think it's safe to say, by giving that extensive frontage that this particular site has, the dominant feature is going to remain the fueling area and the canopy and the mini mart that's underneath it. This is not going to dominate or overpower and simply look like an integrated part of the overall development, much like those fueling pumps that are there now. It's going to look like one nice integrated whole. So with all said, I believe from a planning standpoint, all relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public or without substantial impairment to the zone plan and ordinance. That said, I believe this applicant, with all of the evidence on the record and the movement that we've heard through the dialogue back and forth this evening, has met its burden under the law. The statutory criteria for grant of relief are met and approval is warranted here. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll pause if there are any questions direct or from the board.
Well, I'm going to go to Mr. Hughes. Keenan, can you give us some, whether you agree what you're planning as our expert planner?
Yeah, I generally agree with Mr. McDonough's testimony. I don't have any questions for him. I guess the only other note I would just make for the board is I think it's fair to say that the existing ordinance and these, standards relative to accessory structures probably did not anticipate electric vehicle charging stations specifically. Obviously, it's something that we're going to see more and more of. So perhaps it's something the governing body may want to consider in terms of, looking to amend the ordinances so we can better anticipate these particular facilities. That's all.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Disco, I'll turn to you. That's one of the things that when we have our subcommittee, maybe you can get them together for the next meeting in advance and try to talk about some changes that we can make a suggestion to, some proposed language to the governing body to kind of take into account these accessory structures. So maybe they don't necessarily have to come to the board or it's a TRC or something in the future. We'll leave it to you to review. See what other towns are doing with it and how they're handling it.
You've mentioned that, and it's a very good point, well taken, that nobody anticipated that as an accessory structure. Again, it's still a minor site plan, so it still would be coming to the board.
Yeah.
In this case, because of the expansion of the pavement area, whereas unlike Tesla, you had no change at all other than throwing up the signs and the chargers, But there's a solution there somewhere.
Perfect. Let me pull the board. Mr. Huber? Mr. Huber, you're saying no, but you're on mute. Okay, we'll say no. It's fine. Mr. Barnett?
I'm all good.
Mr. Schwartz?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Brendel?
Nothing.
Mr. Loeffler?
No questions.
Mrs. Ruggiero?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Wishna?
No issues.
Okay. Mrs. Kessel?
I'm good, thank you.
And I have no issues as well. So at this point, I want to take this opportunity to open up to members of the public. Let's see if we have anyone there from the public. I don't see anyone in the Q&A. Just poll, look and see if anyone has any questions.
Seeing none, but if any member of the public does have any questions, please your name and address in the Q&A box so that the chair can recognize you.
Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close this matter to the public and reopen it up to the board for some questions. I see this very straightforward. I'm pretty happy that we have some impervious coverage, pervious coverage being added in to allow the drainage and kind of meet with what the governing body's looking for and the environmental commission's looking for. So I'm going to re-poll the board just to see if anyone has any questions or concerns. It sounds like that's the case. Mr. Huber?
All right, for application 10-2020S.
No, not yet. We're just polling the board right now. Go ahead, Mr. Barnett.
I was gonna make a second to Mr. Huber's motion, but I'm all good.
We got to poll first just to make sure. Mr. Schwartz?
I'm in favor of moving forward to the resolution.
Perfect. Mr. Brendel?
I agree with Mr. Schwartz.
Mrs. Ruggiero? I think she's
Sorry. Okay.
she's good. Mr. Wishna?
I'm good, no questions.
Okay. Mrs. Kessel?
I'm good.
Did I leave Mr. Loeffler off?
You did, but I'm good.
Okay. Okay. And I have no questions. So seeing then, Mr. Huber, you can then make the motion that you wanted to do.
Motion for 10-2020S for BP to electrical charge stations.
Second.
Can we have a roll call?
Committeeman Huber,
Yes.
Mr. Barnett,
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Lawfer,
Yes.
Mr. Brendel,
Yep.
Ms. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Wishna,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kessel,
Yes.
Chair Tiger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Perfect.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So just to go back to something earlier, there was a motion and a second, I believe, on the resolution for which we discussed for KK developers. I think rules of order are that once there is a motion and a second, it should be voted on. I personally don't see any practical reason to table it or to delay that.
I'll second that.
You'll second that. Okay. So
I want to thank everybody for your time.
Yes,
this evening
yes,
Before
yes.
you guys
Sorry,
go into that
Counselor.
discussion.
You can
Thank
go
you.
home now, Council.
Have a
Go
good
home now.
evening. Go watch
Okay.
the game.
Thank you.
thank you. Mrs. Law,
Yes,
can you just read what someone made the motion to adopt the resolution
yeah,
subject to subject to Mr. Keen's adding in the attorney's name for the application K&K developers, as well as acceptable documentation that the church plans to maintain said cemetery, as well as if they choose not to, that there's some sort of association, I'll call it a homeowners association, whatever association it might be, to satisfy that they will be maintained in perpetuity. Who motioned that and seconded that?
it was Ms. Ruggiero made the motion and Committeeman Huber seconded it.
Okay. So, Mrs. Ruggiero, are you comfortable, moving forward?
Yes, but I wanted to make the motion to adopt Resolution 9-2020S with the condition that we add the attorney's name to the resolution and add the condition the applicant will submit a letter, they will maintain the cemetery.
Subject to
Subject to,
board attorney.
yes,
Okay.
subject, yes.
Okay, can we have a roll call?
Ms. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Huber,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Brendel,
Okay.
Mr. Wishna,
Yes.
and Chair Tiger.
Yes. Perfect. Okay, seeing any other matters to the public, and now I'd like to open up to the public for any matters appearing before the board. Apu, any members of the public?
Nobody in the Q&A box.
Okay, seeing matters, I'm going to close the matter of public and entertain a motion before, just to remind the board that our next meeting is December 7th, Monday at 5:30 on Zoom. We are going to send out in advance a list of proposed meeting dates. If you can please look at Jen's note when that comes out and respond with any things. We're going to from a most standpoint, we'd like to keep the meetings on a Monday, but given some holidays and so forth, things had to move around as the calendar existed. So with that, can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
I have one thing. I think the chairman should shade before the next meeting.
Okay, I should have. I'm sorry. Is there a motion for that too? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Boy, that's quick. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Aye.
And we should